Hello and welcome back to Travel Visionaries, the podcast about the future of the travel industry brought to you by the European Sustainable Hospitality Club. Whether you are a hotel manager, travel agent, tourist guide, or a student, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice when you listen to Travel Visionaries. Join the conversation along with Maribel Esparcia and Dan Pontarlier with the most knowledgeable people that are part of our industry. Let's go!
Sustainability, when I started really understanding sustainability for our industry, is like we have so many barriers because it's a very cost driven industry rather than investment or long term thinking. And for me it's like, wow, there are many things we have to change in terms of mindsets, so we can really make this happen. And when I talked to you first time, I'm like, I really like your mindset, the way you approach things, and especially with your company, how you're really driving change. So I thought I really want to learn more about why you decided to kind of pivoting with this time and really do this transition and really help the industry towards really a more circular way to operate.
Yeah, no, thank you. I guess it is a journey, and we are on that journey, but we have accelerated it this year. Obviously, with all the craziness that's gone on, I think it's all forced us to ask more questions. And I think there just comes a point where, like, I've talked to some people recently, and they talk about sustainability as a trend or a buzzword from last year, and is it going to last through? And I just think sustainability isn't a trend; it's a realization. It's a realization that there's a problem, and the difficulty with people engaging with that is that it has been for so long a very slow motion car crash. And when it happens so slow, we've got these more urgent problems over here with making money this quarter, or attracting new customers, or fighting fires, because running a business of any kind is hard. And as you say, in hospitality, where the margins aren't necessarily great and the competition is strong, it's easy to put that on the shelf of difficult problems to be solved. And I think we've just come to the realization that we need to help make that change and help people along that journey. And that is going to mean we need to ask an awful lot of questions and do an awful lot of work, understanding where we need to get to, and then us trying to help plot a path there, and then seeing can come along with us, because ultimately we need to make it easier for people to come on that journey with us. And there are all kinds of different ways that will be right for some people and not right for others. And part of what we're doing with the restorative restaurant framework, obviously we specialize in that F&B space, which I completely understand is a subsection within hospitality. The operational complexity of a hotel is bigger than a restaurant, but many of the design principles apply. What we've realized is we want to try and help people move towards an understanding of the circular economy, and therefore help people make the changes to get to that. And I think as soon as you realize, you have the linear economy, which is, take, make, waste. I take materials out of the ground. I don't need to tell you, but okay, anyone that doesn't understand, if we take materials out of the ground, we make it into a product, we use that, and then it gets thrown into landfill or maybe recycled a bit, downcycled. As soon as we realize that is clearly not going to sustain us as a civilization for hundreds and thousands of years, and that we need to find a way to not be wasting things, then you move towards the idea of a circular economy, right? So we need to find a way to keep those materials at their highest level in the value chain. So rather than it going to landfill or being recycled or downcycled, that we can keep things at a very high level for as long as possible, that we can also design out waste. There should be no concept of waste. I mean, if you just look to nature, there is no waste. There's no buildup of useless stuff over time. And yet, as human beings, we've tended to make it this way because we have this over-rationalized view and kind of not very complicated, but complex view of how systems need to work. So we need to take out the idea of waste. We need to remove pollution. We need to keep things, natural resources, their highest value possible. And we need to regenerate natural systems. And for me, the great thing about circular economy is understanding the complexity of the world we live in. And it really is us understanding as businesses that if we want to thrive genuinely long term, then we need to have an understanding of that complexity. And I actually think that the best businesses in any industry, particularly hospitality, are also ones that understand that. I think if you look, and they probably understand it intuitively. So you get people like Danny Meyer, from New York, famed hospitality expert, has done really well, built a fantastic business. And if you read Setting the Table, the whole premise is built on being a good human. And this below the surface, without really talking about it, he understands the complexity of the world he lives in. He understands his restaurant exists in a neighborhood, and you need to nourish that neighborhood and look after your staff and create a great culture who then look after your customers, and do good things for the community. And if you look at that just in the context of immediate financial gain and on the bottom right-hand corner of a spreadsheet, you will say that doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense.
No, but the long-term trajectory of really good companies is that they do understand that. I mean, if you look at the philosophy of Four Seasons, how they started out and what they were trying to do was excellence, but with this deeply human, caring side to them too. And, if you're reading that book, Four Seasons, A Story of a Business Philosophy, is really interesting to see how they combine those two pieces. Obviously they're at a luxury end, but it's about caring and being a good human. So I think it's actually understanding the complexity and that we sit in this system, and therefore we have a duty as citizens to do a better job. And as soon as you then ask those questions, then we, as we're designers, so we need to help people find the path to do that. That was a very long answer.
It's quite interesting, because at the end of the day, we go back to the human side, and if we really reflect on what things are we really doing on our daily basis, not just in business, but as humans living here, it's like we need to put. I always say that it's more about significance, putting significance in your acts, in how you develop your operations if you're a business, or how you have what is your drive really. And you have very good examples here. But something that I'm intrigued, because I'm not a design expert, of course, I have no idea. I love design, don't get me wrong, but I don't know anything about it. It's interesting how you can really approach in a different way, as of maybe stopping or changing the status quo in a way, like the way we've seen things in hospitality for a while, whether it's restaurant or hotel restaurant, not straight or commercial assets. So how you really position yourselves, how you really can turn this around, what are actions there or recommendations, or where do we start? Because sometimes when we start those projects, and you will tell me, it's like, okay, but where do we start? How much is going to cost me? All of this.
Absolutely, and that's the other thing, is that sometimes it, as I said, building a business is hard. Being successful is hard, and therefore sometimes the sustainability bit can be seen as this extra challenge. But I think you kind of need to row back a bit before we get into the tactics of saying, hey, use more efficient taps and use LED lighting to save on your energy costs. These are all completely valid tactics. But you need to go back to the kind of strategic questions to begin with, of sort of, why are we doing this? What is the point of it? What are we trying to achieve? And then from our perspective, we're trying to look, again, zoom out. Well, it's not just about this project. So if we're trying to talk about the circular economy, there are ways we need to look at a project before we even begin. It's interesting, it almost goes back to the degree I did, which was interior architecture, not interior design. It's an architectural approach, but it starts with existing buildings. The point is, we've got a lot of stuff on this planet already. There's a lot there we can work with. And there's an argument that in sometimes we change things for the sake of change. You could say that really the most sustainable restaurant or hotel is the one you already have. Let's not knock it down and build a more sustainable one. That's madness. The point is, so you start at the first question of, when we look at a new space, for example, we need to look at the demolition and strip out phase. If we're going in there, what was there before? Can we reuse stuff? How much can we tie the design to the qualities of the space, which is better because you get a better sense of place anyway, you're embedded in that. What can we retain? And there's a practical cost good thing there. If you're taking over a previous restaurant, for example, and a lot of the kitchen equipment is decent, you should be reusing that, right? You know, so you audit based on what you can retain, both operationally and from a kind of architectural, experiential point of view. And then the thing I think is slightly missing is we are building a network of partners who can deal with what happens to the stuff that you can't reuse. We need to find people who can either take this to distribute it to different charities. So there's a great company called Globe Chain. I don't know if you've come across them, but they're fantastic at filling this gap, kind of a middleman to say, right, well, you need to strip out a hotel here. We will do this for you. And then we will distribute that and you'll pay us, because you'd have to pay a waste contractor to take stuff away anyway. But we're going to actually do this in the right way. There's another company called Clean Conscience in the UK who are a smaller charity doing the similar sort of thing. So they're really interesting in that space.
But we go back to collaborations, right? At the end of the day, we need to create better partnerships and allyships with different stakeholders.
And that, I think, is the thing I really love the most about circular economy. The thing that is hard, but also exciting about circular economy is you cannot do it on your own. It has to be a collaboration, because that's the whole point. Circular economy is embedded in systems thinking and society. And to make that work, you have to be a good person and going out and putting the effort in. And sometimes this takes more effort and time. It won't necessarily cost more money. But if you're up against it and it's like, oh, we want to start on site in 2 weeks' time. Oh, can you just get a contractor to take that stuff away and strip that out? That's not good enough. So we need to make sure we have the partners in the network in our systems go, hold on a sec, no, we can deal with that in a better way. First of all, what can we keep that will still work and make you a success? Because that is not really up for debate. We can't design half-baked spaces that don't perform. Customers don't care. Most customers, there's a small niche that do. Most people do not want sustainable restaurants or hotels. They want great restaurants or hotels that happen to be sustainable. So we need to make sure that we design for success, to understand what you're trying to deliver as an experience. But we need to do that in the most sustainable way we can, I think.
I think this is a very good point, actually, is that and what we see as well from the guest perspective, as well as from the owner's perspective, is sometimes there are certifications that you've got for your property or for your restaurant that is more facing to the customer, like, yeah, we are sustainable, you can come here, and at the end of the day can be misleading or greenwashing, depending on which ones. So really caring, I think, is always the ultimate goal. Like Scandic hotels, if you go to Scandic hotels, you already know you're going to get sustainable hotels. They don't have to tell you or cookie you or email you with their new, that they ban plastic toiletries. You know what I'm saying? Like they did maybe in 2009, in 2010, 2009. So it's like really how you believe, and you attract the people that believe what you believe, and using that psychology.
Yeah, really. I think that's a really good point, and it touches on some really interesting questions that I've been thinking about quite a lot. There's sort of two things for me that come out of that. Number one is thinking, so often the debate around sustainability, or the narrative that we give, only comes across in two ways. We talk about the moral responsibility. You should be sustainable. You should do less. You should be a better person, which, pushes people away. Or there's a rational argument. Oh, logically, you'll save more money, or there's a logical case for being sustainable. And we know human beings are not rational. We aren't rational. It would also be logical and moral that I am healthier and fitter than I am, and that I don't, I could do losing a stone, but neither of those arguments are going to help. What we need, I think, the trick that we're missing in terms of talking about sustainability at the moment is being able to use our baser instincts as humans in a positive way. How do we make sustainability a status symbol? How do we make it so that people desire that because what it says about them as a person? And if we can tap into that, then the momentum and energy is going to go in that direction. I think we need to understand the irrationality of human beings and make, as I say, something great that happens to be sustainable.
Absolutely.
In many ways, it is often the answer. And the second thing it made me think of when you mentioned that was that I think there is a really interesting question around how you measure sustainability. So there are different assessment systems. And I actually, in a way, for me, it comes down to an idea of scale. So I see there is the three different ways you can approach this. On the smallest scale, we have a narrative, a story of sustainability. You and me, you come into my restaurant or hotel, and I say, hey, that chair you're sitting on, I reclaimed that from a local church 5 miles away. That is a very powerful, direct, human-to-human understanding. And you see what I'm talking about with sustainability. That is, I mean, people underestimate how powerful that is, but that is fantastic. The problem is it's not very rigorous, and you don't know what else is going on, and it is completely open to greenwashing, like you say. So the step above that, slightly better scale, and the one that I think is the most useful is what I'd call a qualitative assessment. So that's things like BREEAM or LEED or SCAR, where they take into account lots of different approaches. So it could be a carbon, well-being, waste levels, all of those. We work with SCAR a lot because it works really well for different sizes of retrofit projects. BREEAM and LEED are normally better at new buildings.
New developments,
So for refurbishing SCAR is really interesting. I think it's probably more of a UK system, but it's
I don't know if I know them.
It's a very, very useful system. It's one we now use on all of our projects to kind of benchmark and hold us to account. You know, I think that's the thing that's interesting about these systems. And with SCAR, for example, you can get bronze, silver, or gold. But the question I got asked from a client was, that's great, but what does gold mean? No one knows what SCAR, BREEAM. These are complex things to understand. Is gold mean? Is that okay? If we all do gold, if we save the planet, have we won? And that which is.
And then until when?
Yeah, exactly. Which is also partly what pushed us beyond SCAR to think about circular economy, because the diagram is then much more solving a bigger system problem. But anyway, so qualitative is really interesting, and we think is the best kind of benchmark. But there is another challenge with qualitative, that question, what is gold? And when you move to the larger scale of businesses, and even the single hotels are larger scale like this, but when you talk to, I was talking to Intercontinental Hotel Group the other week, you cannot escape the next level, which is quantitative, because reality exists on a spreadsheet.
Exactly.
in these examples. And so the question is, well, what can we measure? What can we measure that's science-based, that is unequivocal, and we can definitely get this down? How can we say, right, we want to reduce our carbon footprint per room by 6%? That sounds really real, right? We can't argue with that. So then you get pulled into the land of carbon footprint analysis and net zero and all of these things, which are good. I mean, there's no question carbon is a massive problem and we need to reduce greenhouse gas emission. But the question is the same about SCAR Gold. If we get to net zero, is that okay? Is the planet saved? Well, it would go a long way, but for me, it's a bit like calorie counting to have a healthy lifestyle. I could eat 1,000 calories a day, but eat chocolate and burgers and do no exercise. And I will lose weight, but I will not be healthy. And in the same way, you could get to carbon neutral, but treat your staff really badly and source your food in a way that, kills biodiversity and all these other things. But the simplified metric is, when you scale a company, becomes kind of inescapable. So we're kind of interested in looking at how you could change that metric to being about tons of waste produced, which is something that would tie more into the circular economy. So we've been talking to a company called Bioregional about seeing if we can do that, to see if you can measure, well, what's in the typical life cycle of a restaurant: strip out, build out, strip out again when it fails in 5 years. What is sadly, how many tons of waste are produced in that? And then this is the kind of the genesis of our restorative restaurant framework. And then how can we create a design methodology that will then minimize that?
Then that you can replicate, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So the framework we've come up with starts on 3 phases. As I mentioned, it starts with strip out and demolition. How can we strip out the minimum to give you the chance to be successful and be intelligent with dealing with the waste products? And then in the phase 2, you move into low impact design. So you choose your relevant assessment method. So we've said SCAR or BRIAM or narrative, depending on if you're independent or massive, what you need to do. And then you look at your operational carbon, i.e. how can we reduce the amount of energy that we use, so gas, electric, water, through various tactical measures. Also, making sure you use renewable energy as a minimum.
Important.
So that's your operational carbon.
Yes.
And then there's embodied carbon, i.e. what is the environmental cost of all the stuff that's come in to make this, so the architectural envelope, the finishes, the furniture, all of that. You can take that obviously down to food as well, the actual consumables that come in and out. And then from a design perspective, we look at 2 things. One, the idea of flexibility, because if we want to get a genuinely circular economy, we need to design in such a way that things can change. Part of the fragility we've seen with the world, in the last 6 months, is that people can't change quickly because things were sort of so set in stone. So from a design perspective about restaurants, for example, how can a restaurant change to become an event space if it needs to be in 6 months' time? How can it become a co-working space if the business model needs to change? So we need to design for flexibility, which is not normally done as well as it could be with design. Okay. And then there's a final piece around layout design. So we need to design, lobbies to maximize thermal breaks between outside and inside, maximize the use of daylight, all of those kind of principles. So that all kind of ties together to look at low impact design. And there are some philosophies that can run over the top. So, biophilic design, biomimetic design, they're kind of philosophies for us that, you can tie it over the top. So that's low impact design. And then the important bit is then the 3rd stage, which is designing for end of life. We need to start the project with an expectation of how does this stuff get put back into the cycle if things change or it needs to go away. So we need to design for disassembly. We need to design in such a way that materials can be taken apart, counters, etc., and put into the biological or the technical nutrient stream. Can it be biodegraded, or can we keep metal as metal and reuse at a high value? We need to work with manufacturers that have take-back schemes, genuine take-back schemes at the end of life of a carpet, so they can take it back and recycle it into another carpet rather than it just being chipped up and used as a lower grade product. We need to look at ideas of the subscription economy. So how can we look at models
Super interesting indeed, yeah.
Why does a restaurant owner need to own their furniture? Yeah. Why can't you lease that from the furniture company who's made it, and they are then responsible for maintaining it and for when they finish with it, or when a restaurant goes bust, they come in because they still own it. They take the chairs back, they can reupholster them, change them, break them down, and use that as materials for their next set of products going out. And because they're then incentivized by doing that to make these things as high quality as possible because they need them to last, then you get a kind of slightly more positive cycle. So that's kind of the framework that we're looking at, is how you look at demolition and strip out, how you look at low impact design, and how you look at designing for end of life. And it's a journey we've been on for about 6-9 months now, and it's come out of circular economy. We don't have all the answers yet, but we are very excited to be looking at how this can apply to different scales of project.
I think we've got a few it's amazing how it's, I'm learning a lot today from different insights and the way to really incorporate design with other initiatives. It could be social initiatives, or I don't know, what are your thoughts on more like plant-based restaurants as well, because meat is also
I think it is undeniably an issue, and it's a big source of carbon. There's the Sustainable Restaurant Association in the UK over here do some great work in terms of analysing that. I know from research I've seen that in a restaurant setting, 50 to 75% of the carbon footprint is often from the food itself and the sourcing. And we all know that one of the biggest culprits of that is beef, lamb, those kind of animal products.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no question that an enhanced plant-based offering is a huge step towards reducing that, as is actually also reducing food waste. So, reducing the food waste that comes out of your kitchen, and getting better quality suppliers with a lower environmental footprint are both the way that we need to go. There's an argument, sometimes it's presented a bit black and white. You are either a carnivore, a meat eater, or you're a vegan. And actually, I've seen people, some people who know a lot more than me about sustainability issues, saying, well, if the world went entirely vegan tomorrow, we would have problems with the environment as well. It's just that we need to be an awful lot closer to that end, I think.
It's just reducing maybe our intake.
Yeah, I think
balancing a little bit more.
Yeah, less meat and better quality. Well sourced from people that look after it. Much smaller scale. I think is 100%. The way we need to go to deliver that. It's definitely really important.
So it's, for me, I was listening to you, one of your interviews recently, and you were discussing about this, really the infinite mindset from Simon Sinek. I think you read the book recently, and yeah. I am a huge fan of Simon Sinek. I mean, I have starting with Why, like Leaders Eat Last, all the books, and I do understand that if we want to make all the things we've just talked about a reality for tomorrow, like action plan, let's start. How do we start? The first thing we have to change or make our industry leaders see is that this is really an opportunity. Like, we are living unprecedented times. Yes, we are living in a health crisis globally. Yes, we are our P&Ls or EBITDAs are